Imagine sitting in a hospital waiting room after just losing your baby, and a stranger complains that your crying is too loud. This actually happened, and what the doctor did next will blow your mind. Emily Rodriguez had just received the worst news of her life. At 22 weeks pregnant, her baby girl no longer had a heartbeat, and she was waiting for the procedure that would end this nightmare of a day. She sat in the maternity ward waiting room with her husband, James, sobbing quietly into a tissue, trying to hold herself together in a public space while her entire world crumbled. And that's when Brenda Morrison, a woman who was there for a routine prenatal checkup, decided that Emily's grief was a personal inconvenience. Picture this: Brenda, dressed like she's going to a country club in her fuchsia silk blouse and leopard print accessories, sitting across the waiting room, flipping through a magazine, sighing dramatically every time Emily let out a sob. Emily was barely making any noise, just the kind of quiet, broken crying that comes from someone trying desperately not to fall apart. But apparently that was too much for Brenda's delicate sensibilities. After about 10 minutes of passive-aggressive huffing and eye-rolling, Brenda actually got up, walked over to Emily and James, and said, "I am not making this up. Excuse me, but some of us are trying to have a peaceful waiting experience. Could you please control yourself? This is a medical facility, not a therapy session." James, Emily's husband, just stared at her in complete disbelief, his arm tightening protectively around his wife. And before he could even respond, Emily looked up with tears streaming down her face and said in the smallest, most broken voice, "I just lost my baby. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to HOA Karen Tales for more wild Karen stories." You would think that sentence, "I just lost my baby," would be enough to make anyone with a shred of human decency apologize and back away. But not Brenda. Oh no. Brenda actually rolled her eyes, crossed her arms, and said, "Well, that's very sad, but you're making everyone uncomfortable. Maybe you should wait in your car or find a private room." James stood up at that point, his face turning red, and said, "Are you serious right now? My wife just found out our daughter died, and you're complaining about her crying." But Brenda wasn't backing down. She had that classic Karen stance. You know the one. Chin up, chest out, acting like she's the victim in a situation where she's clearly the villain. She said, "I'm pregnant, too, and this negativity isn't good for my baby. I shouldn't have to be exposed to this kind of energy." That phrase, "this kind of energy," about a woman mourning her dead child. Let that sink in. The waiting room had maybe 6 other people in it, and by this point, everyone was staring at Brenda with absolute horror on their faces. An elderly couple sitting nearby was shaking their heads. A young pregnant woman had tears in her eyes just watching this unfold. And a man in scrubs sitting in the corner looked like he wanted to intervene, but was frozen in shock. Emily just broke down harder, burying her face in James's chest. And James looked like he was about 2 seconds away from losing it completely. But before he could say another word, Dr. Sarah Mitchell came through the waiting room door. Dr. Mitchell, a 40-something OB-GYN with kind eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense, had been Emily's doctor for this pregnancy, and she'd just finished some paperwork for Emily's procedure. She took one look at the scene, Emily sobbing, James standing protectively, Brenda with her arms crossed, looking indignant, and immediately walked over asking, What's going on here? Brenda jumped in first, of course, because that's what Karens do, saying, Doctor, I'm a patient here, and I'm trying to have a calm environment for my pregnancy. But this woman has been crying disruptively for 20 minutes and refusing to take it somewhere private. I think it's reasonable to ask for a peaceful waiting area. Dr. Mitchell's face did something incredible. It went from concern to absolutely ice cold in about 2 seconds. She looked at Brenda and said, I'm sorry. Are you talking about Emily? Brenda nodded, like she'd made some brilliant point, saying, I don't know her name, but yes, her. I'm sure she's upset about something, but, and that's when Dr. Mitchell cut her off. She's upset about something. Let me tell you what she's upset about. Emily came in this morning for her anatomy scan, excited, nervous, hoping to find out if she was having a boy or a girl. And instead, we found no heartbeat. She's been carrying her deceased baby for possibly days without knowing. In about an hour, she's going into a procedure to deliver that baby, and then she'll go home with empty arms and a hospital bill. That's what she's upset about. So, tell me again how her grief is inconvenient for you. The waiting room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and share this video to support HOA Karen Tales. Brenda's face went through about 5 different colors. White to pink to red to purple, and she stammered, I didn't know, but still, maybe she should. But Dr. Mitchell wasn't done. She stepped closer to Brenda and said, maybe she should what? Grieve more quietly. Suffer more conveniently. This is a maternity ward. Do you understand what that means? Not every pregnancy has a happy ending. Some of these women are here for the worst day of their lives. And if hearing someone cry makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you're the one who needs to wait somewhere else. Brenda tried to recover, pulling out her phone and saying, I'm calling the patient advocate. This is unprofessional. You can't speak to me like this. I have rights as a patient. Dr. Mitchell didn't even blink. She said, go ahead, call them. In fact, I'll call them for you. And while we're at it, we can talk about how you harassed another patient during a medical emergency, because that's what this is, a medical and emotional emergency. Would you like me to document this in both your chart and hers? That's when Nurse Rebecca, who'd been watching from the nurse's station, came over with a clipboard and said, Ma'am, we actually have several witnesses here who can confirm you approached this patient and demanded she stop crying after being informed of her pregnancy loss. That's actually grounds for removal from the facility if you continue. Brenda looked around the waiting room and realized every single person was staring at her with disgust. The elderly man actually said out loud, you should be ashamed of yourself. And the young pregnant woman was crying, saying, how could you be so cruel? Brenda grabbed her designer bag, clutched it like a shield, and said, fine, I'll find another doctor, one who respects all patients equally. Dr. Mitchell responded, that's probably for the best. And just so you know, I'll be noting in the system that you're declining continued care at this practice, which means you'll need to find a new OBGYN. Good luck explaining to them why you left. Want to hear the craziest HOA tales every week? Subscribe to HOA Karen Tales and never miss out. Brenda stormed out of the waiting room, heels clicking aggressively on the linoleum. And the second she was gone, the entire energy shifted. Dr. Mitchell sat down next to Emily, took her hand and said, I am so sorry you had to deal with that on top of everything else. You have every right to cry. You have every right to grieve however you need to, and I promise you, we're going to take care of you today." Emily just nodded, unable to speak through her tears, and James shook Dr. Mitchell's hand, saying, "Thank you. Thank you so much." The elderly couple came over, and the woman handed Emily a small prayer card, saying, "We lost our first baby 40 years ago. It never stops hurting, but you will survive this. You're stronger than you know." The young pregnant woman came over and gave Emily a hug, saying, "I'm due in 6 weeks, and if I ever needed to cry in a waiting room, I'd want someone like Dr. Mitchell defending me. You deserve kindness today." Even the man in scrubs, who turned out to be an anesthesiologist, came over and said, "I've been doing this job for 15 years, and what that woman said to you was the cruelest thing I've heard in a medical setting. Please know that most people aren't like her." Dr. Mitchell arranged for Emily to wait in a private room for the rest of her time before the procedure, and she personally walked her and James back there, making sure they had water, tissues, privacy, and anything else they needed. Here's the part that made me tear up when I heard this story. Before Emily went in for her procedure, Dr. Mitchell came back with a small memory box, the kind hospitals give to parents who've lost babies. And inside was a tiny blanket, a journal for writing letters to their baby, a set of footprint ink pads, and a book about pregnancy loss. She said, "I know you weren't planning to need this today, but some families find it helps to have these keepsakes. Your baby girl was real. She was loved, and she mattered." Emily and James named their daughter Lily Rose, and they had her footprints done after the delivery, and they kept that blanket and wrote in that journal for months as part of their healing process. As for Brenda, word spread fast in the medical community because apparently she tried to report Dr. Mitchell to the hospital administration, claiming discrimination and unprofessional conduct. But here's the beautiful irony. The patient advocate actually reviewed the security footage from the waiting room, interviewed witnesses, and concluded that Dr. Mitchell had acted appropriately in protecting a vulnerable patient from harassment. The hospital sent Emily and James a formal apology letter for Brenda's behavior and confirmed that Brenda was no longer welcome at that facility. Brenda tried posting about it in a local mom group on Facebook, painting herself as the victim who was verbally attacked by a doctor for simply asking for quiet. But multiple people from the waiting room were in that same group, and they told the real story. The comment section destroyed her. Hundreds of women sharing their own pregnancy loss stories and calling Brenda out for her cruelty. She eventually deleted her post and left the group, but not before several other OB/GYN offices in the area saw the thread and quietly flagged her name in their systems. 6 months later, Emily got pregnant again, and Dr. Mitchell was her doctor through the entire anxiety-filled pregnancy. Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Lucas, and the first thing she did after delivery was show Dr. Mitchell a photo of Lily's memory, the box that she'd kept on her nightstand through the whole pregnancy. Dr. Mitchell cried, Emily cried, James cried. There wasn't a dry eye in that delivery room. Emily told me she thinks about that day in the waiting room sometimes. Not because of Brenda's cruelty, but because of how everyone else showed up for her. Dr. Mitchell's fierce advocacy, the strangers who offered comfort, the nurse who stood up for her rights. She said it taught her that even in your darkest moment, when one person's ugliness tries to crush you, there are always more people willing to lift you up. Thanks for watching HOA Karen Tales, where every Karen story has a twist. Like, share, and subscribe for more drama from the neighborhood. The moral here isn't just that Brenda was a terrible person, though she absolutely was. It's that vulnerability isn't weakness. Grief doesn't need to be hidden, and the right people will always defend your right to feel your feelings. Emily didn't owe Brenda quiet suffering. She didn't owe her convenient grief. She was a mother who lost her child, and she had every right to cry in that waiting room, in that hospital, in the world. And Dr. Mitchell, she's proof that standing up for people in their most vulnerable moments doesn't make you unprofessional. It makes you unforgettable.